Hello and welcome to Material Girls, a pop culture podcast that uses critical theory to understand the zeitgeist. I'm Marcelle Cosman.
And I'm Hannah McGregor. This week, I am violently wresting control over the podcast for nefarious purposes, which is that I am shamelessly promoting my forthcoming book, Clever Girl: Jurassic Park, available for pre-order now.
Oh boy, Hannah, I'm so excited for your new book, but are we talking about it today on the podcast? Because I haven't read it yet, because as you just said, it's forthcoming. It's not currently came.
It is not came yet, but it comes out on October 1st. And anybody who knows things about publishing knows that means that it actually secretly comes out a week before that. Ooh. And so you'll get it early if you pre-order it now. But no worries. We're not talking about Clever Girl. We're talking about Jurassic Park, the movie, not the novel. Michael Crichton can eat a big one. Consider this episode a sort of sneak preview of the book. But, Marcelle, before we get deep into some close reading of my all-time favorite movie, I want you to tell me about your relationship to dinosaurs. We know I like them. Just look at my decor.
I do like dinosaurs. I live in the dinosaur capital of the dinosaur province. I don't live, to be clear, in Dinosaur Provincial Park. I live in Alberta.
That's the dream.
But I do live in very close proximity to numerous dinosaur fossils and numerous dinosaur museums and numerous dinosaur skeletons. And I gotta be honest, I'm a fan. They're big is the thing about
They're so big.
Dinosaurs. And whenever there are small dinosaurs, I'm always like, I thought they were big. I don't understand. I don't understand this little dinosaur.
What's your deal? I thought your whole deal was being big. No, sometimes their deal is being small, and then there's like a lot of them.
Yeah. Oh, I should also add that for people for whom this is their very first episode of Material Girls, I have a child.
2, even.
I have multiple children. One of them is at the age where she's learning a lot of really interesting facts. And sometimes she learns interesting facts about dinosaurs. And that means that I learn interesting facts about dinosaurs. And last year, the year before, it was all about how birds are dinosaurs because birds are the dinosaurs that survived the meteor crash or whatever. And that's really cool. That's some cool facts.
So we know that kids continue to love dinosaurs now.
Yes.
Did you experience the 1990s dinosaur heyday as a child?
I didn't. And let me tell you a fun, sad memory that I have. When I was in grade 8, my friend gave me for my birthday like an actual Jurassic Park merchandise, like dinosaur from when one of the movies, first, second, or third, or whatever movies had come out. Mm-hmm. She had bought it from her brother because whenever that was, the toys were not available in store. It was past. That was the past. This was the present. And the reason that she got it for me is because she remembered me saying that I felt like because I was a girl, I was never given dinosaurs as gifts.
Outrageous.
When I was younger, and I kind of missed out on having like dinosaur toys. So fast forward to now when I am a real adult and can buy myself toys, but I live vicariously through my children, which is the reason people have children. One of my kids is actually like a dinosaur kid in this like very enthusiastic way. Like he really likes dinosaurs. And so we have all these like dinosaur toys. And I think I really like having a dinosaur kid. It's really fun.
I suspect that a lot of the dino exposure that I had was because I had an older brother. Because you're right, in the 90s, people were still really aggressively gendering the kind of species you were allowed to play with.
That's right. They still had girls sections and boys sections in toy stores, and dinosaurs didn't make their way into the girls section.
They sure didn't. Girls are not allowed to like science.
No.
The closest we're allowed to get is veterinary science.
But veterinary Barbie.
Veterinary Barbie. Okay, so there is a pretty good reason why in the 90s we were all feeling pretty excited about dinosaurs. But this isn't a segment where I give you any kind of context, so this segment must end now.
Oh, but what about you? What are your
No.
favorite? Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? The segment's over, Hannah? How about this? Big Bang. Huh? Meteor.
Meteor. Segment over. Meteored.
Fortunately, listeners, just because the previous segment ended doesn't mean the show's over. We've still got more, like the Big Bang. It's time for Why This, Why Now, the segment that asks the materialist question, what are or were the historical, ideological, and material conditions for our object of study to become zeitgeisty?
Anyway, so today we're talking about Jurassic Park, the 1993 Steven Spielberg summer blockbuster mega hit.
We're talking about Jurassic Park.
We're talking about Jurassic Park.
The book?
The movie. If I catch you mentioning the book one more time, heads will roll. Big Bang.
Big Bang.
And specifically, this will surprise nobody who knows how much I love talking about CGI. We're going to be talking about the CGI.
Ooh.
But I do want to add a little sort of generalist dinosaur note about like, why were we having such a big dinosaur moment in the late 80s, early 90s? Because dinosaur media really surged in that period. And part of the reason, spoiler, that I am going to argue is that the technologies that allowed for the visual representation of dinosaurs in cinema reached a new apex that was very exciting for moviegoers.
Yeah.
But also there was some interesting stuff happening behind the scenes paleontologically that kind of started in the 70s, but you know, it takes a little while for scientific discoveries to make their way into the like pop culture mainstream. So we see it sort of showing up in the late 80s, early 90s. And that had a lot to do with John Ostrom's discovery of Deinonychus, which is the dinosaur that the velociraptors in Jurassic Park actually are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Alan Grant, Sam Neill's character in Jurassic Park, is like loosely based on John Ostrom. So when we see him finding a velociraptor fossil, that one, he's not finding a velociraptor, he's finding a Deinonychus.
Okay.
Because he's in the US and that's where Deinonychus was. Velociraptor was a turkey-sized dinosaur found in Asia.
Oh.
The filmmakers just decided that Velociraptor was a better name.
Okay. Okay.
And Deinonychus is like harder to say.
Deinonychus. I can say it.
You just said it now. So they just renamed them. So those are all the velociraptors aren't velociraptors.
Okay. Isn't it also true that velociraptors were like quite a bit smaller? Like
Yeah. So real velociraptors were turkey sized. Deinonychus was the size they are in the movie. So everything that you see about velociraptors is based on the science that they knew at the time about Deinonychus. They just changed the name.
Okay.
Velociraptors did exist, but they were just a different dinosaur.
Okay.
But Ostrom's discovery of Deinonychus and more generally other paleontological discoveries of the 1970s really shifted the cultural understanding of dinosaurs, because before then people thought that they were huge, cold-blooded, stupid, like these sort of lumbering creatures of an ancient earth whose like extinction was sort of inevitable because they were like so slow they couldn't even outrun a meteor.
Can you outrun a meteor, science person? I'd like to see you
that's
try.
What every action thriller about science is about scientists outsmarting meteors. That's like their top thing. So the discovery of new fossils, one, started to sort of let scientists put together the evolutionary theory, right? That dinosaurs evolved into birds. So Deinonychus, for example, is very bird-like, very raptor-like.
Okay.
And they started to figure out things like they hunted in packs, they were intelligent, they were fast, they were genuinely dangerous predators. And as soon as sort of pop culture got word of the fact that dinosaurs were like smart and deadly and hunted in packs, they were like, oh, well, now we care about these a huge amount.
Now they're fun.
We love things that will totally kill us.
We love to learn about things that are scary.
Yeah, precisely. So we get a real taste of the sort of updated conversation about paleontology in Jurassic Park happening through the character of Tim, who is like constantly citing actually recently published books by major paleontologists of the time.
Sorry, I need you to slow down. Who's Tim?
Tim's the little kid.
The little guy. Okay.
You know how the guy who started it, Richard Attenborough,
Okay.
has his 2 grandkids come and visit because he's like, we're going to test an unbelievably dangerous park, so I'm going to bring my grandchildren here and then send all the employees away.
Yeah, to show how safe it is.
To show how safe it is.
Yeah,
exactly.
So there's an old white man, Richard Attenborough, who has a different name in the movie.
Yeah, that's a normal thing for movies, though.
He's got this great big theme park where people are going to be able to come. They're going to be able to see dinosaurs, IRL, like a safari, but dinosaurs.
Yeah. And he mentions at one point, John Hammond is the character's name. John Hammond specifically mentions that like the like big game expert, you remember him, the Australian with really short shorts?
He's the one who calls the velociraptor a clever
girl. Exactly.
That's right.
He is the like game warden from Hammond's Safari. Because Hammond is a like venture capitalist who owns a bunch of attractions, including a literal safari. So like the safari connection is text.
It's text. Yeah. Okay. So John Hammond, the old white guy who is the venture capitalist who has created this massive safari-like dinosaur park, has brought his grandchildren as well as some experts. That's Laura Dern and Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum.
Yep. There are 3 working scientists with PhDs who have been brought in to confirm that the park is safe because the insurers are upset because a guy got eaten by a velociraptor.
That's how the movie opens.
Parentheses, Deinonychus.
Okay.
This is background to say that like in the 90s, there's a reason why we're getting more dinosaur media. There's like a lot of interest happening in representation, particularly visual representation of dinosaurs. We're learning a ton of new stuff about them, about, you know, how they moved and like, oh, actually they were faster than we thought. People started to figure out that like T-Rex didn't like walk upright like a human with tiny short arms, that they like walked like at an angle, sort of flat, like that they ran like that and their tails were a counterbalance. And like, that's way scarier. If you think of it as like walking totally upright with tiny little arms, you're like, whatever. And then when you tip it forward and it's coming at you mouth first, you're like, oh no. And that is the context in which the CGI for Jurassic Park matters.
Whoa, CGI, hold on. What about Tim? He said Tim was quoting research.
If you want, we can come back to Tim. I mentioned him only because he's there. He's a dinosaur nerd, so he's the voice of dinosaur nerds in the movie. Let's get you back on material context because we started talking about plot and it just...
Coach got upset.
So, Jurassic Park is released in 1993 and it immediately breaks a whole bunch of records.
Okay.
It broke record for the most money made in the opening weekend. And then it was the fastest movie ever to hit $100 million. And then $200 million. And then the first movie ever to surpass $500 million worldwide. Wow. And then it won 3 Oscars for special effects. And one of the big takeaways from movie studios was that people really liked CGI.
Oh, okay.
So Jurassic Park is often credited as being the movie that sort of spurred the takeoff of CGI in Hollywood, especially in summer blockbusters.
So I can start blaming it for the like garbage CGI that would follow. But, you know, we'll talk about that later. That's fine. I know. We don't want to trash talk Jurassic Park. It's not Jurassic Park's fault that people used its powers for evil. Okay. So was Jurassic Park then the first movie to use CGI?
It was not. Arguably, CGI can be dated back to the 1950s, depending on how we're defining it. But it was the first movie to really make CGI work. And a lot of that has to do with how tastefully restrained they were about how they actually used it.
Right.
So There's a really interesting article in The Conversation by Peter Hodges, lecturer in contextual and critical studies for visual effects and motion graphics at the University of South Wales. What a specific job, Peter. Anyway, last year was the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park, so there's so many articles about it from last year.
Okay.
And he argues that it was the way Steven Spielberg used CGI in Jurassic Park that revolutionized the film industry of the time.
Okay, well, I'll bite, pun intended. What was revolutionary about how Steven Spielberg used the CGI, Hannah? Was it just that it was tasteful?
I mean, it was mostly that it was tasteful. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little behind-the-scenes story about the process of developing the technology to depict the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. So by the early 90s, Spielberg was known for being somebody who could like tastefully combine technology with storyline to make big like sci-fi action movies. So he made Jaws, for example, and one of the famous things about Jaws is that you actually see very little of the shark on screen. Right? It's like if you see the shark the whole time, you notice that it's a bad shark. But if you only see it for a few seconds, you're mostly like dreading the shark.
Okay.
He made Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is an alien movie where you like don't see the aliens. He made Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, you barely see that arc.
You watch Nazis melt. Important. And he made E.T. the Extraterrestrial. So
you do see that
extraterrestrial. You do see that extraterrestrial quite a lot. So when they were looking for somebody to make the screen adaptation of Michael Crichton's best-selling novel, which we'll never mention again, he was the ideal candidate. But his big challenge was, how do we put dinosaurs on screen? So the original...
How do we do it well?
How do we do it well?
I should have asked this earlier. Were there movies about dinosaurs previous to Jurassic Park?
Yes, absolutely. Early movies about dinosaurs, almost entirely using claymation or similar technologies. And what's really interesting is that the original plan was to use stop motion animation.
No.
Yeah. Because they wanted them to look real.
Yes.
So they built a bunch of animatronics. And importantly, a lot of what you see on screen in Jurassic Park is animatronics.
Okay.
Which is part of why the effects have aged so well.
Like the Triceratops that's on its side because its belly hurts.
Yeah.
Okay. That's animatronic?
I think she's a Stegosaurus. I can't actually remember. Is she a Triceratops?
That's a Triceratops.
I've only seen the movie 400 times.
How many times have you seen this movie, Hannah?
So many times. Yeah, that's an animatronic, right? That's why they can all gather around her and touch her and interact with her, and it doesn't look fake. So they were just for the action scenes, they were going to use stop motion animation, essentially using the animatronics. They brought on George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic team, but they were
Star Wars.
But they were only going to do motion blurring on the stop motion to make it look more realistic. That was going to be their only job.
Okay.
But then this plucky Canadian animator, Stephen Williams, who worked for Industrial Light and Magic, was like, I think I can do this better with computers. And he rendered a T-Rex skeleton. Like he used fossil diagrams and what people knew about them to render a skeleton and animate it moving around. And then, because he knew that he was not supposed to be doing this, he just left it playing on a computer screen when the movie producers were scheduled to do a studio visit.
Oh my God.
And like they just showed up and saw this and were like, oh, yeah, okay, we'll do that. So there's this amazing anecdote in a New Statesman piece by Pippa Bailey where Spielberg has to then break to Phil Tippett, the lead stop motion animator, that the animation is now going to be fully computer generated instead of stop motion. And in response, Tippett apparently said, I think I'm extinct. And that conversation is played out in the movie Jurassic Park when Alan Grant, the paleontologist, is talking about how now that there are real dinosaurs, he's out of job. And Ian Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum's character, is like, I think you mean extinct.
Art, Imitating life.
Art imitating life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it draws a parallel between the scientists in the movie creating real dinosaurs and then the CGI experts in the real world creating lifelike dinosaurs, right?
Yeah, and that's a real through line, I think, in what's going on in the movie is that they're like thinking about technologies of representation, like cloning real dinosaurs as being related to technologies of representation like CGI. But we're going to come back to that later when it's thesis time. For now, I got a pop quiz for you, Marcelle.
Okay.
How much time do you think dinosaurs are on screen in Jurassic Park? My hint is it's less than you think it is.
Okay, so you have generously given me the suggestion of a half an hour, which is great because I was like, oh, like an hour? So instead of sounding like a total dummy and saying an hour, I'm going to say, oh, like half an hour.
It's only 15 minutes.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Of that 15 minutes, about 9 minutes are animatronics.
Wow.
Including like a lot of the velociraptor close-up scenes. It's actually a guy in a velociraptor suit.
Stop it. Stop it. No.
There's a guy in there controlling it.
No.
So there's actually only 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
Of the Industrial Light and Magic CGI dinos.
So Jurassic Park won 3 Oscars and changed the direction and future of CGI in the film industry using 6 minutes of
6
CGI.
minutes. And, you know, we can talk more about the power of using CGI sparingly. But I also have a theory as to why, which I think Pippa Bailey summarizes beautifully in the line, quote, "The film's main attraction was the same as that of its park. Dinosaurs, life-sized, real, in your face," end quote.
Beautiful. Okay, so you and Pippa Bailey both, maybe, are saying it wasn't just the use of CGI, but the use of CGI to generate dinosaurs specifically that was so exciting.
That is my theory.
Okay. Well, you keep saying theory, and so I think that we should maybe do some theory. What do you think?
Yeah, in theory.
Yeah, okay.
So this segment is called The Theory We Need, and I need you to hold on to your butts because this is going to get a little bit conceptual.
Hold on to your butts. That's a line from the movie.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to dive a little bit into the history of American spectacle and its relationship to dinosaurs. And I'm going to begin by asking if you know who P.T. Barnum is.
No.
Okay. That is lucky because it suggests to me that you have not seen the terrible movie, The Greatest Showman.
I have not.
Yeah, bless. You know what? Keep not having seen it. I know I'm alienating people right now. I don't care, guys. P.T. Barnum was a terrible man. He was a 19th century showman and con man and founder of the Barnum and Bailey Circus. And listeners may be familiar with him from the absolutely inexcusable musical loosely based on his life, The Greatest Showman, which casts him as a champion of the underdog when in fact he perpetuated a series of hoaxes grounded in exploiting non-normative bodies.
Okay, let's not celebrate him.
Let's not celebrate P.T. frickin' Barnum, you guys.
Okay, all right.
So Barnum actually got his start, his first ever display was he toured and displayed an enslaved Black woman named Joyce Heth.
This is starting out poorly for champions of P.T. Barnum.
Yeah, sorry, guys. You're on the wrong side of history.
Zendaya, shame on you.
Okay, so Joyce Heth, the context in which he toured her was he claimed that she was 161 years old and had been the quote-unquote mammy to George Washington. And then when his audience grew bored with just gawking at a elderly Black woman.
Mhm.
He then deliberately planted a rumor that she was actually a convincing automaton, quote, and this is in the information that he spread about her, quote, she was made up of whalebone, India rubber, and numberless springs ingeniously put together, end quote.
I don't like this.
No, it's really disgusting. So Joyce Heth reminds us that the origin of American popular culture, particularly its fascination with staring at technological marvels, is deeply entangled with the history of the display of gendered and racialized bodies.
Okay.
Which we have talked about before is there is a long history of this. Joyce Heth was not an outlier. The history of capturing and displaying Black and Indigenous people in particular was very popular in the 19th century. There's a fabulous article by scholar Louis Chudsoke called The Uncanny History of Minstrels and Machines, 1835 to 1923, that sets out a lot of this history. And in it, he connects Barnum's claim that Heth was an automaton to the, quote, history of freakery, ethnographic display, and the complex birth of both the museum and the Western carnival circus complex, end quote. So he's explicitly connecting the rise of 19th century museums and the rise of the circus as being intertwined in their fascination with the display of things that were freakish / things that were of ethnographic interest, which is a much blurrier line than contemporary museums certainly want us to know.
Right.
Yeah. So museums and circuses were parallel institutions of popular spectacle, and both were deeply rooted in imperialism and white supremacy and the politics of the gaze, of course. That is, of who gets to do the looking and who is looked at. And those institutions were trying to make money. They were trying to attract audiences. So they were seeking ever more exciting exhibits. And through those exhibits, they were also helping to mark the boundary between the human and the not quite human, between people who counted as subjects and people who could be displayed as objects of curiosity. And Joyce Heth, who was already being dehumanized by being toured around as a curiosity, was further dehumanized by Barnum's later claim that she was an automaton, right? Which pushes her deeper into the category of thing rather than person.
Right. So not only is she a human who is being exploited by this person, he then further exploits her and takes away her humanity entirely by claiming that, actually surprised she's not even human.
Yeah.
She's just a machine that, was he claiming that he built her?
Yes.
Yeah.
What he did was plant a rumor, supposedly not coming from him, that, and the rumor was oh my God, P.T. Barnum actually just built an automaton to look like her, and he's been trying to pass her off as a real human. So then people go back and try to see whether she's real or not.
Okay. So then how do we connect this history of circuses as racist institutions to dinosaurs?
The museum connection's going to be important, but partially there's just this really evocative coincidence of naming.
Oh.
Because the fossil hunter who found the first T-Rex skeleton in the early 20th century was named Barnum Brown. And he was named after P.T. Barnum.
Oh my God.
Which wasn't I was just reading a book while doing the research for Clever Girl and just came across this Barnum Brown, he was named after P.T. Barnum because his older brother had been taken to see the circus and really loved it. And so when there was a new baby coming, he was let's name him Barnum after the circus. And that is the guy who found the first T-Rex skeleton. And I was thanks, history.
What a grotesquely small world.
Grotesque. So Barnum Brown was the fossil hunter who was hired by the American Museum of Natural History to find dinosaur bones to put on display there. That was his job. Okay. And that's important. 19th and 20th century fossil hunters, they weren't looking for bones just to further the field of paleontology. They were looking for them to display them. They were looking for displays.
Okay. in this context then, Hannah, is the gawking and display and spectacle, is that just a facet of what science meant in the early 20th century?
It's a lot of what science meant in the 19th and early 20th century, is it was really intertwined with these emergent institutions of spectacle and with early American capitalism in general, because a lot of forms of scientific discovery were being funded by like American philanthro-capitalists like Andrew Carnegie and J.P. Morgan, who were getting rich off land theft and resource extraction and the exploitation of, unpaid or underpaid labor.
Right.
And who bought themselves good reputations by like building libraries and museums and funding scientific expeditions.
That makes sense then, right? Because if you give the so-called average citizen, which is like white voters, if you give them something to go and look at, and you're like, look, you can come and learn and see all these things that you've never seen before, and you can do that thanks to the exploitation of these people, then you get narratives like, well, yes, that's bad, but look at all the good that comes out of it.
Yes, 100%. Like, it might be bad that these landscapes are getting devastated by resource extraction. But in the process of dynamiting the shit out of half of the US, we are finding bones.
And you can come and look at the bones.
You can look at those bones, and they're pretty cool.
And you can learn about history.
For a small fee, you can just come and look at these bones.
Yes. Okay. All right.
So historian of science Lucas Rappel has, in fact, argued that American museums' business models helped pave the way for the growth of American corporations in the Gilded Age. He basically argues that like museums invented vertical integration strategies so that they could control fossils from discovery through to display.
That makes sense.
So you would like hire people to go out and do fossil digs, but you have paid for them to do the fossil digs in the first place. So every stage of it is controlled by you, the wealthy person.
I know this is only like laterally related, but it's making me think of the displays that they have at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller, Alberta, where like...
About how good digging up oil is?
Not exactly. So I'm not sure if this is still the case, but at least in the recent past, like the last 10, 15 years, the law was that if in the process of excavating something, whether it was for resource extraction or building homes or whatever, if you found bones, you had to stop and it had to be like investigated or whatever. So they had to get a team of paleontologists in there to finish the dig and figure out what it is, et cetera. And they would have these displays at the museum that would show the maps and locations of all of the dinosaur bone discoveries and everything. And there was always this like huge absence of discoveries in and around the tar sands areas. And so you're like looking at it and you're like, oh, wow, how convenient for these like oil and gas companies that no bones have ever been discovered in this region that is famously plundered and decimated.
And there's no way this multi-billion-dollar industry is breaking the law.
There's no way.
So there must be another explanation.
And just because this corner of the museum happens to be named the Suncor, like the Suncor wing.
Suncor presents dinosaurs.
You know, like, I guess what I'm saying is this all makes sense. And it's still, I believe in my heart that it continues to happen. It is still ongoing.
100%. It is something that contemporary museums go to great lengths to disguise now in a way that they didn't used to. There's this wonderful piece by a nature writer named Verlin Klinkenborg, which is my favorite name anybody has ever had.
It's quite good.
It's about dinosaurs. I think it's called What Are Dinosaurs For? Anyway, he refers to how museums are trying to distance themselves from, quote, the Barnum-like hustle of their dime museum predecessors, end quote. Note another gratuitous reference to Barnum. So, yeah, contemporary museums absolutely still have that in a lot of their DNA. And dino DNA, but they are really trying to pretend that that's not the case anymore.
Right, because they don't want to emphasize the spectacle. Is that it? They want to emphasize the learning?
Exactly. But it's my contention that Jurassic Park's success, in part, is about bringing together those parallel histories of P.T. Barnum's fake automatons and Barnum Brown's museum-funded fossil digs.
Because they were both about spectacle and looking at things?
Yeah, exactly. And about looking at a particular kind of things, right? Things that blurred the lines between the real and the imagined, between the natural and the artificial. And I think that dinosaurs, which were real but don't seem real, which were natural but also literally had to be put together by paleontologists kind of guessing which bones went where, that, really scratched that particular spectacular itch. And you know what else I think scratched that itch?
6 minutes of CGI dinosaurs?
Yeah. And so I think it's probably thesis time.
Okay. All right, Hannah, I'm ready. Give us a thesis.
Both P.T. Barnum's circus and Barnum Brown's fossil hunting were in service of a public hungry for something exciting to look at, and who were fascinated by new technologies that might be able to trick them into mistaking fantasy for reality. Dinosaurs, at once real and surreal, natural, and constructed by paleontologists, scratched that voyeuristic itch. And that's the same itch that John Hammond, the fictional creator of Jurassic Park's fictional park, is targeting. Hammond is a kind of modern-day P.T. Barnum, calling for us to step right up, tricking us with artifice while promising to show us something real, something, in his words, we can see and touch. But that is also what Jurassic Park, the movie, is doing. At the heart of the success of Jurassic Park was how beautifully it produced the sense of the dinosaurs as being real and really there. Spielberg used both cutting-edge computer-generated visuals from Industrial Light and Magic as well as life-sized animatronics. When the dinosaurs get close, when our protagonists touch them, they feel real because they are, because they're actually there. Beautifully wrought machines, not of whalebone and India rubber, but certainly numerous parts ingeniously put together. As John Hammond welcomes his visitors to Jurassic Park, he welcomes us, the viewers, as well. When our protagonists first look at the dinosaurs, that is also the first moment we, the viewers, see the dinosaurs. And alongside them, we are swept up in the sheer joy of looking. John Williams' majestic score washes over us, underlining that what we are seeing is larger than life, that it is sublime. But we are also swept into these parallel histories of circuses displaying non-normative bodies for entertainment and films displaying female bodies for the male gaze. In this essay,
Hold on, wait a second. Female bodies for the male gaze. Are we going to talk about Laura Dern?
Go, no. I mean, we can if you want to, but no, actually, one of the really important things about the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park is that they are explicitly all female.
So that they can't reproduce.
Except
that they do.
Except that life finds a way. So this whole movie that is fascinated with spectacle and with the display of non-normative bodies and with this wealthy white man who, like the philanthrocapitalists of the past, is controlling the vertical integration of dinosaurs by funding the fossil digs that Sam Neill's character, Dr. Alan Grant, and Laura Dern's character, Dr. Ellie Sattler, are doing, who's so convinced that he can take these ancient creatures and turn them into a theme park. He is explicitly displaying female bodies. And they are female because that is supposed to, according to the scientists, that is supposed to make them more controllable.
Listening to the male characters in the movie talk about these dinosaurs as she's and hers does remind one of the way that men talk about boats and trucks and tractors, etc., when they use she, her pronouns to
she's a beaut.
Yeah. Oh, look at her. She's so majestic, etc.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting is that the dinosaurs who are the most consistently gendered female via characters are the velociraptors.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in fact, despite knowing that all the dinosaurs are female, Dr. Grant, when he is talking about T-Rex and how T-Rex functions as an animal, it uses he, him pronouns.
Oh, really?
T-Rex is always male.
Just like how dogs are always male? It's the Rex. It's the Rex
all T-Rexes
part, right?
are boys and all velociraptors are girls. Yeah. We know this.
Duh. Huh. Okay. Okay. So then would you suggest then that the way that the female dinosaurs break free from expectation and wreak havoc on the park is also perhaps related to our preconceptions of what we expect women to do and how they act when they are out of control?
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on with Barbara Creed's concept of the monstrous feminine here, right? The way that movies like to depict monstrous women in particular as villains. You know, I think it's really significant that the dangers the dinosaurs present are frequently big open mouths.
Big gaping maws.
Big gaping tooth-filled maws, wet gaping tooth-filled maws.
Hungry maws.
Yeah, there's sort of a vagina dentata situation going on, which is really ruined by the recent paleontological discovery that T-Rexes probably had lips.
Stop it.
Never. I'll never stop. And I think it's really important, you know, in this first movie that we get a lot of maws and then we get like these 3 explicitly female velociraptors. Like I said, all of the dinosaurs are female, but the only ones who they like extensively talk about their femaleness are the velociraptors and the clever girls. And you know what those clever girls' favorite pastime is? It's trying to hunt down and eat children specifically. They are so hungry for John Hammond's grandkids. They learn how to open doorknobs. They want to eat those kids so bad.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Because, you know, that's the most monstrous thing that a female can do.
Eat children.
Yeah. Just ask Medea.
This is just a wee tangent. To my knowledge, I've only seen Jurassic Park twice. I saw it when it first came out. I saw it at the drive-in movie theater. And I saw it again recently, just a few months ago when they were screening it in Drumheller, Alberta. And so I took Elliot. We went to see it together. It was great.
Amazing.
But something that I discovered on that rewatch is that because I saw the movie originally at the drive-in, and they always have to start the movies before it's fully dark because people who are there to see the movie at the drive-in just like start honking while the sun is still up. It's really annoying. But because it was so light out, I actually like have no visual memory of the first like half an hour of that movie. And the bit at the very beginning where the person is eaten by the dinosaurs, it was totally lost to me completely. So like I didn't know what the I didn't know what the impetus was for bringing all those people into the park. Why are all these people here?
Yeah, they got to bring them in because the insurers are mad because of the eating incident.
Yes.
So they want to prove that the park is safe, and so they bring in these 3 they bring in a paleontologist, a paleobotanist, and a chaotician.
Yes,
who theorizes the uncontrollability of complex systems.
That's hysterical.
And really funny for insurers to be like, what about this guy who theorizes the idea that nothing is insurable? Like, why is he there? He's there to swagger around pelvis first and then to lie with no shirt on, sweaty and injured.
Yeah.
That's his job.
Yeah.
He's the eye candy.
Jeff Goldblum as eye candy is very funny to me.
It is very funny. Yeah, so the opening scene is really vital because it's kind of the first time we see a dinosaur, but we actually only hear her and see her eye.
Oh, you don't see her little claw?
You don't see her little claw.
Oh.
You just see a guy disappear into her enclosure, and then you see her eye looking at you through the bars of the cage.
Ooh.
Like, while you hear people like screaming and like guns going off, it's like just one eye watching you.
Spooky.
And then the next time you see a dinosaur on screen that isn't a fossil or an animation, like a quote unquote real dinosaur, is the moment when John Hammond says, "Welcome to Jurassic Park." It swells, and then there's a brontosaurus there, you know, and like Sam Neill, Alan Grant starts to like hyperventilate and needs to put his head between his knees because there's like a whole dinosaur there. But that's like, we see them at the same moment that those characters see them, right? Like we are also like, whoa! But before that, they saw us, right? Like the eye's looking at you. And is like, I'm gonna eat you. Just looking through that cage like, you think you're looking at me, but actually I'm looking at you. Whose gaze is whose?
Whoa. So, all joking about how many times you've seen this film, you have actually written a book about the movie because you love it so much. I obviously want to ask you questions about like, what do you love about it? But I want to save those questions for material concerns. And instead I want to ask you the really hard-hitting intellectual questions about like the politics of the film. And so you were just saying like, who sees who, like whose gaze is it? Talk to me more about what you see as the politics of this movie and why it excites you so much.
Yeah. So for me, Jurassic Park is a really interesting combination of a film that is making an argument about technology and mediation and power and the dangers of capitalism, etc., that I think is all text, and a movie that is available to an even more radical reading in ways that I think cannot be attributed to the creators, right? Like a lot of my reading of Jurassic Park requires us to kill the authors and to sort of argue for a larger, almost sort of mythical reach or scope to this story. So at the level of creator intention, deliberately inserted text, it is undoubtedly a movie that is about the dangers of big tech and of scientific overreach and of, in particular, white male hubris that understands nature to be something that can be controlled and displayed through human mastery. And like the argument of the movie is like, no, you can't. That is foolish. And people will die if you try to do that. And it is very interested in the technological overreach and hubris, particularly as a film problem.
What do you mean?
So what I mean is that Jurassic Park is very much a filmmaker's film. It is very interested in itself as a film. It spends a lot of time thinking about and playing with ideas of representation. For example, there's a very famous scene where they're getting chased in a Jeep by the T-Rex and they're looking at her in the side mirror and it says, "Objects in the mirror may be closer than they appear." And we see the T-Rex through the reflection.
That's right.
That opening eye scene, like that is not an accident that a film opens with something looking at you, right? Like these are moments that are thinking about the relationship between spectacle or display and the viewer, and that are thinking about the limits to which people will push things in order to put on a good show. Some people theorize, I heard this from friends of the podcast, Helen Zaltzman and Martin Ostwick, that some people theorize that in part Spielberg was alluding to the disastrous events of the Twilight Zone movie.
Oh.
Do you know about this
I
at all?
don't know. No, please tell me.
In 1982, while John Landis was directing a film version of the Twilight Zone, there was a helicopter crash on set that killed one adult actor and 2 child actors.
Oh my God.
There was a lot of legal action against the people involved in the shoot, including John Landis, and a lot of contemporary laws about like how you were allowed to, for example, treat child actors on set, and the kinds of safety precautions that you have to go through, like emerged in the wake of that, of the essentially criminal neglect that happened on that set. And so the idea of somebody being so focused on whether or not they can that they don't stop to think about whether or not they should, which is Ian Malcolm's, accusation towards the Jurassic Park scientists about cloning dinosaurs, also applies to these like white male directors who treat actors like they are props or tools in order to achieve something spectacular on screen without adequate concern for human life. That's also like really sort of available as a subtext of the movie. And we know that movie makers love making movies that are about movie making. So that's just a classic mise en abîme. I don't know if I believe that anybody involved in the movie was deliberately making a feminist argument, but I think the feminist argument is extremely there because of the way in which they treat biological sex in relation to the dinosaurs, because of the important fact that only men are eaten. And, I think that there's some other really interesting feminist subtext available in the movie that primarily has to do with the fact that it's a family movie, and a lot of it centers around our main male protagonist, Alan Grant, taking care of 2 children.
Right.
And making sure that they don't die.
Yes.
Like, that's his major contribution. Like, they establish up front that he really doesn't like kids. And then when tasked with keeping these kids safe as they make their way through the park, he steps up. And there's a very strong through line that the men who step up and take care are allowed to survive. And the men who are cowards, who endanger other people, who put self-interest over collective care, they die.
What about
specifically, they get eaten by dinosaurs, very specifically.
Lady dinosaurs.
They get eaten by lady dinosaurs.
What about the clever girl guy? What about like the safari guy? Where does he land on that spectrum? Because he's not a coward.
Yeah.
He's quite brave.
Yeah. He's not a coward. He's very brave. His death, I think, is a little different because he is the one who like really understands how smart the velociraptors are. If we return to the conversation we were having earlier on about like the way the field of paleontology was transformed by the discovery of Deinonychus as an intelligent hunter, like this movie is obsessed with how smart the velociraptors are and how good they are at killing. And so as a character, he's like, the trope of the wildlife hunter whose ultimate end is to be killed by the most majestic creature imaginable. This is always a thing, like Brad Pitt in Legends of the Fall needing to get eaten by a bear. It's like a real trope, is like a man who loves the deadliness of nature so much that he simply must be consumed by it.
I'm hesitating on whether or not to say it's like he sacrifices himself to the velociraptors.
He does sacrifice himself to the velociraptors.
Yeah, and his final words are clever girl.
Girl.
It's awe. He's expressing awe for the fact that he's about to be ripped to shreds.
which truly for me is one of the most powerfully feminist moments in the movie, because what is more feminist than a man being like, yeah, girl, you eat me. That is an ally.
That's an ally. A man who allows
That's the
himself.
only form of allyship I am interested in from white men. If you are not calling me clever while I actively eviscerate you, you are not an ally.
That's so fair. That's so fair.
Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, it is a sacrifice. He knows in that moment, and you know who he sacrifices him for?
The children?
The only woman.
Oh, Laura Dern.
No, Ellie. Yeah, because the two of them are headed to the outbuilding where they can reboot the power so that they can restart all of the systems that Dennis Nedry, the corrupt computer programmer, disabled in order to steal dinosaur embryos. So they're headed there together, and he's like, they found us. It's already too late. Like, we're already surrounded. And he tells her to run while he holds their attention. Right. So he sacrifices himself to the velociraptors for the only woman so that she can heroically turn the power back on.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Hannah, I simply must tell you that my maw is slick and salivating. I am ready to just bite into your book as soon as my pre-order arrives at Audrey's Books here in Edmonton.
All I want is for everybody to shove this book in their wet, gaping maws. Big bang!
Material Girls is a Witch Please production and distributed by Acast. You can hack your way into our Unix system at ohwitchplease.ca. Try not to get eaten by velociraptors as you slowly move the cursor over to transcripts, click, reading lists, click, and merch, click. We spared no expense. You can also find guided tours of our other shows, Gender Playground, a podcast about gender-affirming care for kids, and Making Worlds, a video podcast about sci-fi, fantasy, and the radical power of imagining otherwise. Visit ohwitchplease.ca and don't forget to bring your lawyer.
Have some probing follow-up questions about the ethics of Witch Please Productions? You'll find all the answers in our superb newsletter available at ohwitchplease.substack.com and our even better Patreon at patreon.com/ohwitchplease. We're also on Instagram, X, and Threads at ohwitchplease and on TikTok at ohwitchpleasepod.
Thanks to Auto Syndicate for the use of our theme song, Shopping Mall. And of course, thanks to the whole Witch Please Productions team. Our digital content coordinator, Gabby Ankylosaurus Iori. Our social media manager and marketing designer, Zoe Plesiosaurus Mix. Our sound engineer, Malika Quetzalcoatlus Gumpenkam. Our transcriber, Ruth Archaeopteryx Ormiston. And our executive producer, Hannah Dreadnoughtus Rehack, a.k.a. Cochosaurus Rex.
At the end of every episode, we will thank all our new Patreon supporters and every member who hasn't been so preoccupied with whether or not you could that you didn't stop to think about if you should. Patreon support is the way we pay our incredible team. So unless you want us to get funded by a corrupt venture capitalist,
a white man,
you got to support us on Patreon. And we gotta say, thank you. You make this show possible. Our enormous thanks this week to Sophia, Anna C., Kate F., Amy Jane J., Melissa R., Chloe C., Olivia, Emily T., Amy M., Charlotte, and Sarah H.
We'll be back soon with a whole new episode. But until then,
later, stop motion animators.